Should college teams start implementing pitching roles for their staffs during season, like having specified starters, relievers, closers, that sort of thing? We had this suggestion from one of our fans on YouTube, and so we decided that we would do a video on it. Be sure to subscribe and please comment with any questions or comments you have regarding this video. We really do want to hear from you.
We sure do.
Okay, well, what do you think, Nicole? Do you think we should go to having roles, or do you think it's better to leave it more how it is now? Like, we've moved away from having like the one ace who throws, 80% of the innings for a team. Thankfully, that was brutal. But do you think that the staffs should have specified starters and closers, or do you think that everybody should be able to do every role?
I personally think specifying it can also limit your staff, because I don't think one person or one pitcher can ever be like 100% starter, 100% closer, 100% in relief. Like, I think some people are naturally better at different roles, but I don't think that it should be limited to, okay, I'm a closer, okay, I'm only ever going to close games. I don't think a lot of schools really have those kinds of roles, but like me personally, I feel that I did a lot better when I came in relief or to close, mainly because I think there was more like adrenaline, and that those kinds of situations excite me a little bit more, like naturally, like that natural adrenaline. But I also don't think that just because
you have a preference.
Yeah, just because I have a preference, or just because like I might do better in those situations, doesn't mean that I also can't be helpful to the team in a starting position also. And I think it also depends on like the team that you're playing, like the scout, all of that, how the pitcher's feeling that day. Like there's some days where it's just like you don't have it. I think it's kind of restricting. Yeah. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think the biggest reason, the most practical reason I agree with you is the roster size is too small to have a staff to include your group of starters, your group of middle relievers, and your group of like one or two closers. There's just not enough roster space for that. So the way it's set up right now, you just can't do that. But I agree. I think that if you start to give out specific roles, you're going to be very limited as to what you can use. That's one of the things I actually really like about softball versus baseball, is that pitchers are more versatile. Every pitcher does have their preference as to whether or not they want to start or relieve. I think I was actually one of the few. I just loved to do both. I loved being a starter and like setting the tone for the game, just getting in there and just like making it known like, hey, we're going to beat you today. But I also loved, like, my favorite is going in bases loaded, no outs. I love going in that situation. I love the pressure. I love the adrenaline. Oh my God, it was the best.
Fun.
But it is. But most pitchers aren't like that, right? Most pitchers like to start or they like to relieve. And that's okay. They need to be able to do both, but like, it's totally okay to have a preference, and they should be voicing that preference to their coaches so that they can help the staff in the best way that they can.
And vice versa, the coaches should also be communicating that with the players. Like we've talked about before, like communication with coaches, knowing what your role is. You have to know your role, like as a person, but also like your coach is very much involved in what that role is. So if you want to know what that is, you have to ask your coach.
100%.
And I liked what you said about like softball player or pitchers obviously have to be a lot more versatile. You should be practicing both situations, starting, relieving, practicing counts, different pressure situations at practice, all of that to prepare you for those. But naturally, I do think that there are pitchers that do better or prefer one or the other.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think like from a coaching perspective, I think you want to look at how your pitchers stack up to each other. I was always told it's harder to adjust from up to down and fast to slow, which makes sense, right? Because like up pitches, they are perceived as faster. So when you're looking at your pitching staff and figuring out like maybe you're facing a lineup like OU, that's like very dynamic and they make all of the adjustments, doing something where you're going up to down and speed to a little bit more off speed and things like that. Like you have to look at that when you're coming up with your pitching lineup for the day or potential pitching lineup for the day.
It's not random on what pitchers coming in and we're starting, coming in, all of that. Like there are, we even have situations at OU where a pitcher would go in for like a batter or two because the matchup is better. Like statistically based on the scout against either lefty pitchers, righty pitchers, whatever that pitcher spins, whatever pitches they have matches up a lot better. Maybe it's like closer game, you know, hot in the lineup, like they take him out, put in, I guess, mini relief pitcher to get those outs, and then a new pitcher goes in. Like there is a lot of strategy when it comes to starters, relievers, closers, all of that.
Yeah, and you don't see that too much in softball, where you see a pitcher coming for a batter or two. You don't see that too much yet. Again, I think because staffs are just typically smaller than in baseball, so you can't. It's a big risk to burn a pitcher for 2 outs, for 1 or 2 outs, right? You know, if it's like 5th, 6th, 7th inning, that's a different story. But you know, 3rd, 4th inning, like that's a big risk because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I know we've done that in like later games, or even when we're scouting, like Coach Rocha would say like, okay, like for example, Nicole, take note of like these specific hitters because you'd be a really good matchup against them. Like, so we as pitchers, even through scouting, know like maybe what that role is or what we can do against certain hitters, all of that. But there is a lot of strategy also depending on the coach and the program. Like I know OU looks into a lot. No stone goes unturned, basically. When it comes to scouting.
And then as far as whether or not making the shift to having pitching roles would be good or bad for softball, I don't necessarily think it would be bad. I just don't think it's practical. And I think it would take away from, again, like we were talking about the versatility of pitchers and really being able, or for each pitcher to really be able to showcase what they're capable of. I think it would just take away from that. But I don't necessarily think making that shift would be a bad thing. You just can't do it with the roster size right now.
And I also think like softball pitchers, like you grow up like as you're playing the game in different roles. So you're kind of already like,
I think travel baseball does that too. I think travel baseball, like youth baseball, I think, and I don't know, right? Like I don't coach baseball, but I think youth pitchers have to be able to do all roles.
Because I remember like in like high school and stuff, I know that that's kind of, I guess, maybe more the age where at least in baseball they start having those roles. At least,
I could see it being different
where it's like, oh, he's a starter, but he's a closer, and they never really cross that line. But that's just so boring. Yeah. Like, wouldn't you want to be able to, you know, mix it up? Yeah. So, like you said, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that it can limit opportunities. And like you said, roster size isn't big enough to just be doing all that.
Yeah, you can't carry and like.
If there's not a need to do it, I don't see why you would do it. I don't know.
And a lot of it goes back to this whole idea of like, well, not the whole idea, but like you are slightly safer to pitch more days a week than baseball pitchers, right? No, the arm circle, the underhand throwing motion is not more natural than.
Yeah, I was about to add that too.
I'm sorry, but cavemen did not throw spears at mammoths underhand.
Yeah,
you can't use
good
this
point. I'm gonna start using that because when people ask like, oh, pitch count, or like, oh, it's more natural, and I'm like, really?
No, it's
What's
not.
natural?
It's not. Look at any toddler when they're throwing things. They throw overhand. It's not more natural. It's complete BS when people say that. The difference is we throw on flat ground, so we don't have the added G-force of throwing downhill. And in deceleration, which is when you have most of the injuries occur, we have an extra muscle that aids in deceleration, so our arm is safer. That's the only difference. But if you look at the wear and tear on the shoulder between a softball pitcher and a baseball pitcher, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same.
When people say that, I'm like, so you're just completely minimizing all the arm pain I've ever had? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And pitchers, softball
high school,
pitchers,
okay.
How many softball pitchers do you know have hip issues, hip and lower back issues?
Oh, yeah.
Like so many.
Tons.
Yeah. So like maybe we don't have the elbow issues, but there's still a ton of pitchers who have like elbow tendonitis, and I know a bunch of pitchers who tore their bicep tendon. We have a ton of hip and lower back issues because of how violently we plant on our front leg. So anyway, back to this.
I feel like that was a necessary rant.
I got totally off topic. I'm getting off my soapbox now.
That was necessary.
But it's a little bit safer for softball pitchers to throw every day in games. And so like with a closer in baseball, you know, they're throwing minimal pitches, you know, it's like 1 inning. So it's okay for them within reason, right? But softball, we don't necessarily have to have that limitation. And so you can have somebody start on Friday and they can be relief on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And, you know, other than fatigue and making sure that they're taking care of themselves and really monitoring how fresh they are, they could potentially start again on Sunday. And that really just comes down to the individual pitcher. And so that's another big reason why I don't think that we need to have all these roles for pitchers, because we play 3 days a week, it's a lot easier to just manage your staff and be able to have pitchers throw, in different roles every day.
So stay tuned for next week's video and keep an eye out on our socials. We're going to be asking you guys to ask us some questions to get to know us better. So with that being said, we'll see you next week. Bye.